Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome everyone here in attendance, as well as to our viewers who are live streaming via Bayshore TV YouTube channel. I'd like to take a roll call. Trustee Brown,
Present.
Trustee Rudolph,
Present.
Trustee Falpua,
Present.
Trustee Cabanero, not here, and Trustee Avalana here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I need a motion and a second for approval of the agenda.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous. I just want to take this opportunity to report out of closed session. The board had met with a legal representative with regards to school district litigation against social media companies for the youth and mental health crisis. The board took action and we voted 4-0 unanimously to initiate litigation pursuant Government Code 54956.9 D4. Number 5, public comments. Superintendent Ville, are there any public comments?
Legaspi, did anyone sign a card? None at this time.
Thank you so much. We'll move on to number 6, consent items. I need a motion and a second.
Motion.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second for approval of the consent items. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous. All right. Okay, we'll move to number 7, educational items. I'd like to turn this over to Superintendent Ville.
Okay, thank you. So, as you know, we're in the process of conducting a strategic planning process. The board has met with our consultant, Dr. Smith, and our graphic recorder has captured our discussions around creating board priorities. The second step in the process was to engage with staff to have a conversation around utilizing or using the structure you've provided with your board priorities to create school goals, school and district goals. And I have a few staff members here who would like to share about the experience and the process of strategic planning to get us all connected on the same page.
Is it good, Marcus? Can you hear me okay? Okay. Good evening. I'm Brandy McZee. I am the 8th grade math and science teacher here at Bayshore. This is my 16th year in the district, my 21st year of teaching. And I just want to start out by saying I really appreciate the process that the school board went through to come up with their board priorities. It's really lovely to be able to start creating those connections and streamlining across from the board to the community. So thank you for taking the time to do that. We appreciate it. As someone who has been here a long time, I have experienced at least 8 different administrators and their leadership styles. And with that, at least 8 different initiatives from year to year. They've always changed. And so going into this process, I actually questioned whether I would participate, because I've participated in a lot of these strategic plannings. I've put a lot of Post-its on papers. I've written a lot of things on poster paper that have been rolled up, placed on a shelf, and forgotten about. At least that's the way we interpreted it, because nothing seemed to come from it. Nothing seemed to stick. And so I decided, you know what? No, I need to do this. I need to participate. So I did, and I'm really glad that I did. Not only because that Mr. Smith was, or Dr. Smith was a really great facilitator, but I was able to collaborate with a wide range of people within our school community, first-year teachers in our school community, faculty other than teaching staff. So it was really great to get a lot of people's opinions and a lot of their input. So I entered it with a very healthy skepticism, but I left with a very healthy hope that we will move forward with this. And I get that idea from Mrs. Veal that there will be follow through. So thank you. I appreciate that. So anyway, so getting started, we looked at your 3 priorities that you established, and we looked at the 3 to 4 so elements that were underneath it. And then we took the opportunity to just brainstorm all of the hopes and dreams we have for our students when they leave the district. And we were told it doesn't matter how lofty it is, just put it on there. Let's get it down. So then we took those lofty ideas and we categorized them under the 3 priorities that you came up with. Some of them crossed over all 3. Some of them were in just 1, a couple of them. And then we broke up into small groups, into 3 small groups, to focus on taking the priorities that we came up with and creating actionable items out of them. Like, this is what we want our students to walk away with, and here's how we're going to achieve it. I don't think that the 2 days were long enough to do it. We felt a little rushed and we didn't finish. And we were okay with that because, again, I've been through this process a couple times or similar processes a couple times, and we know it takes more than 2 days. So we were okay with that. And fortunately, we've found a little bit of time to involve the whole staff and get their input as well, because we didn't feel that the 20 or so of us that were there didn't feel that it was right for us to just be making these decisions and saying this is what we're going to do for our students. So there's that. And then what else?
We all came together as a community within our own school, and we really just enjoyed talking to each other one-on-one with nothing else going on.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that personally. I've met a couple of you guys before. My name is Whitney Smith. I teach 5th grade here. It's my first year at Bayshore, 2nd year teaching overall, and I've never felt more welcomed by a community. I really loved being part of this process. I felt like even my own voice was seen, and I really valued that time and my own input. I loved being able to help my peers and help just everyone I work with focus on what is best for our students.
Yeah. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We look forward to seeing the fruition of our efforts
Thank you so
coming
much.
soon. Yeah.
Does any board trustees have any questions for our lovely teachers here?
Well, I don't have any questions, but I just want to salute you guys for all the work that you do. And Ms. Maxine, you've been here for a long time.
Someone told me I was the OG the other day. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, but all right. Thank you, Teresa.
But I appreciate all the work and the fact hearing that you're willingly that, and even a newbie, willingly to take this and run with it, absolutely, motivates me to do more. So thank you.
Thanks. And as part of the community, I said I vacillated back and forth between whether I would go or not, but ultimately I felt it was my responsibility to be there. I've been here for a long time, and I will be here until I retire or they cart my dead body out of my classroom, whichever comes first. So I felt like I needed to be there. I needed to show buy-in, to show support to my colleagues. And I think I probably would have felt left out had I not had my opinion heard. So thank you again.
Can't wait to keep this going.
Yeah. No, thank you so much. Everything you said, all the work that you did through the strategic planning with Superintendent Ville and Dr. Smith, he's a great individual. But that's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of us collectively to collaborate together in order to reach those goals, and ultimately our students and their achievements. And it all starts here. And
Yeah.
we're going to keep this going. And I appreciate your time, your efforts. Love seeing you guys around the school, and we appreciate you greatly.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And next, we have a visit from our Bayshore Library head librarian, Christine. Please say your last name for me. Thank you. Please come to the podium. There are some wonderful supports happening at the Bayshore Library, and we'd love to hear them.
So Sarah's actually going to present first, and
Okay.
then I'll navigate for her.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for having us. Sorry. Sorry. I'm the youth services librarian at the Daly City Public Library. So I kind of help oversee all 4 of our branches, what we're doing. And so I work with Christine now. I'm so happy she's at Bayshore. And we're very excited to tell you the state of California has, state library is providing free online tutoring to all public libraries in California. So this is something that all of our schools can get on board with. And we're just going to give you like a little demonstration in just a second so you can see how it works. But this is an amazing opportunity and resource for kids, K all the way up to adults. Adults can use it as well. There's 24-hour assistance, live tutoring assistance for specific subjects like English, Spanish, language arts, and math. So they can get like help immediately from online tutoring. And then all the other subjects between 10 in the morning and 10 at night, they can get online live tutoring. So they also offer this resource in different languages. So English, Spanish, Mandarin, Cantonese, Vietnamese, and Tagalog are offered. And what's really great is we don't need a library card to access this service. So there's geolocation from Daly City. So if you go onto our website under e-library, you're gonna do, there's 2 ways to get it. You wanna do service, okay. The youth services page, and then there's homework resources. And so it's called Brain Fuse. And what's also great is you don't need to create an account or anything. There are a couple of things if you're going to do writing. There's a writing lab if you have questions about your writing, or if you just wanted to ask like a general like question that's not specific to homework, you could send a question. Those things you would need to create an account, but they don't ask for any information other than you just create a username and password. So they're not asking for any information about their address or phone number or anything like that. So we're just gonna do a quick little demo, right? So if you click on the top, live tutoring, and then you can select a grade. So Christine, you were mentioning 6th grade math, 6th grade math. Yeah, so you can pick, and then you can select. And then if you click on preferences, Christine, that's where you can select what language you want the tutor to be speaking or typing in. And then you could also, above that is check tutor availability. So like I said, math is always there's someone always available 24/7, but you can just check on that just to make sure that someone's available. So should we try? Let's go. Let's try it. So you can see at the bottom, there's someone typing. So we're able to type. There's also a feature if you wanted to do audio. There's a way to do that as well. And there's a lot of different things that they can do. There's a whiteboard. So if a student has a specific problem, they can take a picture of it and send it. There is, what else?
Can you read it so that people?
Sure. So we're just typing an example. If a snail travels 2 inches in 5 minutes, how far do they travel in 10 minutes? And so also what's great is they're not gonna just provide the answer. We're gonna see how they try to walk you through the steps so that you're not just getting the answer. So maybe this will take a minute. But I wanted to just briefly share that there's other things besides like specific courses that students can get help on. Like I said, there are the writing lab. If they have questions about writing, they can get help on writing a resume, like college students or adults can also get help like that. Those are the ones that wouldn't be immediate. So they would get like some, maybe I think it's like 12 or 24 hours that usually they would get some kind of response with their question. So this is taking a little bit of time, so you have to be patient. But it's great because they have an app that students can use. They can use it from like a laptop, a tablet, a Chromebook, anything like that. And what else? There's another, I wonder, sorry, this is taking a little bit of time.
It doesn't usually take this long, so it might be connection or time of day.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But I can go forward with the
Well, I was just gonna say there's also like other resources that are not live, but it's if you wanted just some help on multiplication or for a specific grade level, you just needed some extra help on math or science or whatever. There's something called Skill Surfer, so they provide videos or articles or things like that so that they can just get that extra help but it's not live. And they can get help. There's a language lab resource. So if they're specifically needing help in their language courses, they have tutors for Cantonese, ESL, French, Mandarin, Spanish, Tagalog, and Vietnamese. So there's a lot of great help for all of those. And like I said, it's for all ages, but of course we want our students to get the help that they need. And it's free. So Christine, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry, the demo kind of failed.
Yeah, it's kind of slow.
But I just wanted to quickly share that, like Sarah said, we're really happy to have this resource be available for free. It is a very costly resource normally, but the California State Library has made it free and available to everybody in California. It's really easy to get to from our website. You don't need a library card. You can just go to the library website and click on anytime. And I just wanted to share my personal experience really quickly with it because I've been spending a lot of time with the middle schoolers who attend the after school program / open gym at the community center. And it's really helpful for, it's a tool for adults to help kids with their homework because to us adults, the math is new. So it's a useful tool in guiding them through it. And I just wanted to emphasize that, the success of the tool will depend on the adults using it and promoting it to kids because they're not going to be necessarily interested in logging on by themselves at night, especially if there are barriers such as no computer or internet. The library can help remove those barriers. We're open Thursday nights. We can provide assistance. Maybe when the library's closed, the community center can provide Chromebooks, but it'll all depend on adults really getting on board and pointing kids towards this resource and using it with them. So yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you. Does any of the board members have any questions with regards to Brain Fuse? Well, we have Christine and Sarah here to answer some questions.
Okay.
Have we gotten any feedback from teachers?
Oh, that was one other thing that I wanted to point out is the collaborate feature. So if any teachers are available for extra hours of tutoring, they can use the collaborate feature to do some online tutoring. If they can't meet with their students in person, they can meet with them online and use all of the tools, the whiteboard tools and all of that.
So it's still new, so we haven't really gotten much feedback about it. So that's why we're bringing it to you to share. But I think the state library did provide that over, let's see, over 150,000 of the users. So that's like 6 months. We started 6 months ago. So there's been over 150,000 users using it. Not specific to Daly City, but it's a really awesome resource. And like Christine said, we just need to get parents to realize the value of this because students probably won't be jumping on this by themselves. But it's so great because these are just like real tutors that can help you immediately. So we're excited.
And it's free.
And it's free.
There you go.
Free and easy to get to.
That's
Thank
right.
you, ladies. Thank you,
Yeah.
Sarah.
Thank you so much for your
I
time.
heard about the presentation in our last meeting, and funny, I was gonna report that for my boards.
Oh, you are.
Yeah, but you're here,
I'm
so
here.
thank you so much.
Thank
That's
you.
really-
Thanks for having us.
And I brought handouts for everybody.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So our last item under educational services is a reading data update from Principal Baker.
Mr. Dyson, can you possibly refresh it one more time?
Yeah. It's the rain.
Isn't that amazing?
And skylights, you can hear it especially.
Yeah, when it was hailing the school, it was amazing. Just that experience of the hail hitting the kids. I was subbing in the 5th grade, and it was and the kids all said it was hailing outside. I said, "There's no way it's hailing. There's no way." We look outside, and it was hailing. So thank you, Mr. Dyson. So while he's doing that, this is hot off the press. What I wanted to present was we had seen the reading data. That was just the initial fall data. And I felt that it was, you'd asked for a revisit of that once we have updated information, including our reading levels. And so this little presentation is kind of doing a comparison. So you could see the growth that has been made. And one of the things that I really want to point out when we look at it is several things. One is that our ELA status right now is in flux. We have a curriculum that is not being used consistently because we are in transition to use a different curriculum. So we have new teachers that are doing an incredible job learning as they go, finding resources, collaborating with their colleagues, and we also have a lot of kids who had a lot of learning loss from the 2 years of reading, which is a nationally known situation, right? So what I really wanted to focus on was just highlighting the growth that has been made, and also to do a short dive into what our areas of growth are as we move forward and start looking at what curriculum we are going to bring in the fall. And thank you, Mr. Dyson, for your patience. I appreciate it. So this is our general reading data off of iReady. The top bar line is the fall, and the bottom is from winter. So this is school-wide. So as you can see, the biggest area of growth is from the students who were 2 grade levels below to moving to 1 grade level below. That's kind of the biggest area, but you can just see percentage-wise that we do have kids who have moved to grade level or above. And that has been our biggest area of improvement. And it's a testament to the skill of our teachers that has happened. The next slide is by domain. And so this is just an interesting way to reflect on the areas within language arts that were having more success than others. And so this is a general, I can drill down and show by grade level, which is also really interesting if you want more nuanced data around grade level and where the successes are. But as you can see, phonological awareness is a huge success for, we're doing very well with that. And our biggest area of growth is with both informational text and comprehension overall. So historically at Bayshore, we've had our biggest area of growth has been around making inferences, like teaching children not just to read and comprehend what they're reading, but be able to push their thinking and make inferences off of what they're reading and explain to others what they're reading. And so that still remains our biggest area of growth. High frequency words, we're rock stars with high frequency words. And so you can see that there is some fluctuation within some of these that's just kind of interesting. I don't know if you just want to take a minute and reflect if there's any questions that you have around this particular slide.
This is great. One question, I probably have a couple, but the first one is, so in the fall, how early is the first fall assessment given?
The first fall assessment data was done in kind of late September, early October.
So, and this is a question of just, does the assessment at that time, do you think students are still impacted by summer learning loss during that assessment as
Absolutely.
well? So time over, like year over year. So we may have another assessment in the spring and then see another assessment next fall, and there may be a drop because of summer learning loss, but then the expectation was by the winter, they'd be ramped up and at least where they were in the spring, if not more.
Exactly. So the data that we saw that first time was a lot of summer learning loss, because those first 6 weeks of school are really about building community and setting norms in our classrooms and expectations and things like that. And so that's really the baseline. So this is really seeing the growth from then until now. So this iReady data is fairly recent.
Yeah. And then again, just an ask, maybe it would be interesting, especially since I know there's a big data point of students who are able, or more importantly, not able to read at grade level by the 3rd grade, and how that has this huge ramifications. So it'd be interesting to kind of at least, if we were going to take a deeper dive, drill down into those third, second, first grade
Yeah,
levels.
so I actually, the reading data from the F&P assessments, I did do a little bit of
Oh, cool.
the tail end of this kind of talks a little bit about that. So that's where
Okay.
you'll see like, what are our areas of growth? I mean, this is a celebration of the growth that we're making, which is really a testament to the skill and commitment of our teachers. And you can see like, what are the things where we really need to put more energy into as we move forward.
Well, and as you had mentioned, it's growth, and while we're transitioning curriculum too, which makes it
Right.
even more complicated.
It is very complicated.
So-
Yeah. And I'm really proud of, we came on this year with, new staff, 5 new teachers, and they've really just took the ball and ran with it and have asked really good questions, have sought out help, have had some coaching from Dr. Conrad, but we also didn't have a lower grade coach. I mean, we had Miss Roger who was supporting. We also had more supports in the lower grades as far as curriculum that we are intending to continue to use with guided reading, with LLI, and with phonics. So you'll see that reflected a little bit. So you can go to the next slide. So this is the overall placement by grade. So the one on the left is the fall. The one on the right is winter. So you can see by grade level where the improvements were, where there were the most improvements. And so again, I think it's just an interesting point to sort of stop and reflect, like looking at the big successes around phonological awareness and high frequency words, and knowing that those standards around, inferential, making inferences, and also using informational text, which has really gotten kind of wonky with the use of technology. Word on the street is, we're studying informational text, and yet we're mostly doing things online. You're expecting kids to find, to understand how to find sources. It's very complicated. I feel like as we were trying to keep up with technology, that has gotten more complicated. It's not as simple as it was when we were just using books. Any questions about this? So, okay, you can go to the next slide. So this is, these are percentages. So this is in there. This is just if it's easier, if you're the kind of learner who, those graphs are really helpful if you're a more visual learner. If you're someone who's more mathematically inclined, this is pretty much the same data, but it's just showing it by the overall placement by grade and percentage points. So, and again, the green with the far left green is above grade level, green is at grade level, yellow is 1 below, the red is 2 below, and then the far right is 3 or more below. That's what that key is. So you can see we have quite a few, we do have, when we look at our students who are far below, and you'll notice that there's not, when we're in the really younger grades, this is when they're just starting to learn their letters. So it's really where you start to see that gap, just like you were talking about in 3rd grade.
Just out of curiosity, I'm encouraged to see that the percentage of the students that assessed in the winter went up almost across the board. And there's certainly more 100% in the winter assessment. Is it just absenteeism that causes a student not to be assessed?
It's a huge part.
That's why I'm asking if there's anything else. I mean, absenteeism.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of absenteeism,
Okay.
and then trying to catch up with that. So some of it might have been technology, at the time, and when we were first getting started, there were glitches with kids being able to access the test, with kids getting online. I don't feel like it was I think it was more absences, though. That's an interesting question.
That's why I was just curious. Yeah.
Okay, so you can go to the next slide. So this is where looking at the F&P data. So this is looking at the reading assessments that teachers are doing with their students as opposed to the online assessment. So this is elementary. And so the left column of number of students showing one or more level of growth, and then the other number is how many students were assessed. So fifth gets a pass. They weren't quite done with their, this is 2 new teachers who have not finished their assessments for the second trimester, which actually are not due yet. I asked that they had them completed so that I could do this, and they're still working on it. So, but you can see the number of students showing one level up for each grade level, and then the number of students at grade level. And of course, the number of students at grade level can feel really alarming, but I think it's important to remember that across, just to your point, Mr. Rudolph, in the beginning, was that this is across the country, that we're just seeing a lot of learning loss and a lot of catch up that needs to happen. And what I really want to highlight is the growth. So I think it's important to recognize where kids are at and where they're moving and how they're getting there. So, and yes, it is very hard to look at the numbers of who's at grade level right now. We're also looking at kids. This is including children who English is not their first language. This is including children who have IEPs. So all of that is folded into this data. Any other questions about elementary reading?
So with regards to LLI, what are some of the areas that we're supporting those students that are affected with reading?
So with the children who are receiving services with LLI, what exactly are they improving upon?
Right.
So it
'Cause
depends.
I'm assuming that's a large number, right?
It is and it isn't. We really had to pare down because we lost one of our LLI teachers, and then we also have, so now we're down to 2. And then they're due to absences. We have some kids who haven't gotten those services. So I feel that the LLI is definitely has a huge impact. Like the kids who are getting the services are really supported by that. It depends on what the span is. So the 3 different programs that we have are supporting the comprehension skills at the students at that level. It just depends on which span we're looking at. It's also, they're also getting that support from, when the teachers are doing small group instruction, and our Ms. Rozier, especially at the younger grades, has been pushing into support both Ms. C and Ms. Haley have been pushing into support, not just the students who are on their caseloads, but other students in the class as well. And with the younger grades, they're supported also by the guided reading curriculum, which now I think the teachers are really getting their sea legs to use and are getting more skilled at using the guided reading in small groups, and the phonics curriculum as well, which particularly with 2nd grade, that they have really been using with more frequency. So if there are no other questions, we can go to the next slide, which is the upper grades. So this is 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And again, highlighting the growth that almost every single student in the 8th grade has gone up at least 1. And a lot of the students in 7th and 8th grade were already at grade level. So, I think that data is reflecting it's reflecting the growth, but also that some of them were already at a Z, which is the end of the road, which shouldn't be the end of the road, but it is as far as our assessment goes. Again, number of students at grade level. I think that what I notice is that we had fewer supports for the upper grades. We have the LLI, we have the guided reading and the phonics for the lower grades. And with the upper grades, where you're really diving into a deeper understanding in terms of comprehension and inferential learning, and the standards are much more nuanced and complex, that's where we're seeing a bigger area of growth in there. So any questions about middle school?
So at grade level, Sucks.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna point that out, you know, if we're looking at in a few
There's
months.
a huge gap over there.
It is.
But
So,
that's where the first column is the encouragement.
Right.
Right.
But they're supposed to be, we need to improve this, you know, the grade level.
Well, it all built on top if, you know, I mean, I imagine it would be interesting to find out what percentage of the eighth graders have been with us
For a long time, since
since kindergarten.
Right.
Mhm.
And has any service applied, or what are we doing to those children and those students? And
Right.
if they're riding the same boat.
I mean, again, it's like, this is where we set goals. It's like, I mean, the goal should be that every eighth grader is at grade level. Or let me put it, fully at the level that their potential will allow them to go to. Fully recognize their potential by the eighth grade.
it also, I think, looking, it would take a lot of more picking through the data, the iReady data or the F&P data to tease out how many are English language learners, how many students, you know, I mean, all of that is just wrapped up in this. So I think it's important to remember that. And again, when, you know, and my curiosity was really about that one or two kids that really couldn't bump up a reading level,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I mean, you made a point earlier, just a moment ago, that more of the resources are used in elementary and not enough or even anything is being utilized in the middle school. Is that a true statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would say that I notice with the upper grades is the teachers are doing a phenomenal job at providing reading that is of interest, you know, capitalizing, like they're using the Common Lit curriculum, which I think the kids are much more engaged in. And their relationships with the students are really strong. So I think that they're sort of building off of those things in terms of like engagement. And it's that switch that's supposed to happen, that pivotal switch in third grade about like I learning how to read and now I'm reading to learn after third grade that kind of gets disrupted, has been disrupted, and then causes that gap to widen as the kids get older. I also noticed that it's harder, stamina has kind of gone down, I think with the older grades in particular, that's, you know, to speak to like social media and sound bites and kind of, you know, quick digestion of things as opposed to sitting and like reading for 45 minutes uninterrupted. You know, I notice across school systems in general, like, and talking to other school leaders that's difficult right now. And reflecting on my own teaching as a second, third, fourth, seventh, and eighth grade teacher, that was not as big of a problem. And so I think that's a reflection on the time that we're in, you know, more than anything. So, and it's not that we go, oh, well, I mean, that's like, now we have to start to roll with like, this is where we're at. This is where the kids are at. How do we meet the kids where they're at in this way to bring them up, you know? And what I notice is that our teachers are they're super creative. They're super on the level with the kids as far as speaking their language and like I said, just having those kind of relationships with them and knowing what they're interested in. And I think that that interest is really, you can't do anything without that. You know, it's challenging to find curriculum at the level that some of our kids are at that's high interest. You know, that's always a very big challenge. And I know, you know, we use books that are called high-low books. They're supposed to be like high interest, but at a level that will be accessible to students and really push their reading. But even that, you know, when kids are dealing with other social pressures and things about like, I don't want to be perceived as someone who can't do these things. Like they're dealing with a lot of other things that I feel are impeding them. And that's why, you know, I feel like it's important to reflect on this in a very, it's just a lot. It's a lot to think about moving forward. And that's it. That's what I have. Does anybody have any other questions for me?
Any other board members have any questions for the speaker?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item 8, human resources.
Okay,
You want me to?
sorry. Oh, sure.
So adoption of a resolution regarding reduction in particular kinds of services. Education Code 44955 authorizes the Bayshore School District to reduce and/or eliminate particular kinds of services provided by certificated employees due to declining enrollment, reduction of elimination of certain funds and/or district needs. The Board of Trustees may lay off not more than a corresponding number of the certificated employees of the district at the close of the school year. Preliminary notices will be issued by March 15, 2023 to affected employees. It is not rescinded by board action. Final notices will be issued by May 15, 2023. And I'd like to hand this over to Superintendent Veal for Resolution 22-07.
Yes, thank you. So this resolution basically outlines what you just went over with regard to the process outlined by Ed Code. In our discussions that we've had in closed session and that we will continue to have as we move through this year, also conversations that we'll have with regards to negotiations and the May budget revise. There's a lot of information that's still coming to us about the funding that we'll have and the needs that we have at our school year for next year. So this resolution is a step in the direction of, in the case where we have to do a layoff, that layoff would occur in our ed specialist at a full-time FTE position. We currently have 4 ed specialists. One serves in our special day class as the instructional leader in that class, and 3 serve to support our students with identified learning needs that are academic based. Our numbers are declining. Overall enrollment is declining, as well as our service of students with identified needs. And depending on what our budget does or shows us, we may need to reduce one of those educational specialists. Reducing this does not mean that our services go away. Our numbers are small enough that the remaining staff will be able to serve the needs of the students and any students that will be identified for these services. So this is a hopefully not a step we'll have to take, but per Ed Code, notifications have to go out by March 15th. And then we have between March 15th and May 15th to solidify if this is necessary. So the action I'm asking you to take is to approve resolution number 2207.
Any board members have any questions with regards to this resolution? You know,
So you need to vote to
Yeah.
approve this. Sorry.
so I need a motion and a second to adopt resolution 22-7, resolution regarding reduction in particular kinds of services.
Motion to approve resolution number 2207.
I got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous, 4-0. Okay, moving on to the next item here. You good?
Yep, I'm good. We have an update. So if you remember at our February meeting, there was a request to connect with Mid-Penn Housing to receive an update on the process or the progress of the work that's being done in our neighborhood. So we have the Associate Director of of Housing Development, Andrew, and I'm going to ask you to say your last name.
Belak.
Belak, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight, Andrew. I believe Mr. Dyson has your presentation.
That is it, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. My name's Andrew Belak, and I work at Midpenn Housing. We are a nonprofit affordable housing developer. Besides just building affordable housing, we also own it and manage it and provide services to our residents for the long term. And I'm here to talk to you about Midway Village, what's going on just a few blocks from here, and an update on the progress and where we stand today and what's going to happen in the future. So you can go to the next slide. So this is a sort of site map of the entire site, about 15 acres, starting originally with about 150 units that are owned by the County Housing Authority. And this as a long-term plan that was developed over multiple years through collaboration of the county and Midpenn for a redevelopment of that site. So more than quadrupling the total number of units there to serve more low-income families, low-income moderate-income families. The final result will be 555 total affordable homes. So it's a mixture of different style of homes as well. Some are townhomes, some are larger 4-story buildings spread across the site. We're also, Midpenn is not directly responsible for this component, but there's also going to be the redevelopment of the Bayshore Park and relocation. So this is twisted around. So I think north is on the right side, but I'm going to simplify it, I may call north the top side of the site just to make it a little bit clearer when I'm talking about it. In addition to relocating the park, we are also rebuilding a child care center that's existing on site right now that has capacity to serve about 110 children. And the way the work is happening, considering this is obviously, we need to be sensitive to the existing residents that are there, is to phase it over the course of 4 different phases, which allows us to ensure that everyone who's there right now is not going to be required to move off site at all during this construction. So they're able to stay in their homes during the construction, and all of the people who are living there right now will be eligible to and have be first come for being able to move into the new development. So that's 150 of the existing households. And we are going to be the long-term owners and managers of the site, the property, I mean, but the County Housing Authority continues to own the underlying site. So why don't you move to the next slide? So as I mentioned, people who are there already at Midway Village are going to be the people who have the first opportunity to move in. And then everything else is all the other units. So that would be 555 minus the 150 households that are there right now. So about 400 additional units are reserved for low-income families at a range of income levels, but go all the way up to 70% of what's considered the area median income. So we basically offer units at a tier of income levels. So some might be more at 50% of the area median income, some might be more at 60. And I know that is a little bit of affordable housing speak, but it basically means, we look at, and there's an official process to look at what the incomes of the average incomes in San Mateo County, and then figure out what is considered an affordable rent for people who are earning lower levels of incomes. We also have some units that are set aside for transition-aged youth, meaning people who were formerly in the foster care system but are aged out of that and may need additional supportive services in their living situation. Midpenn also offers services for free of charge for all our communities, and at this one as well. So that includes a wide variety of things, but can include sort of training and classes on financial resources, health and wellness. We always have after-school program that's academic-based for children, career opportunities, and then just sort of linkage to community resources. So we always also have a community manager, or in this case, since it's going to be such a large development, multiple community managers who live on site and work closely with residents, and then also services staff that are geared towards helping provide these services and connect them with resources to other services where needed.
Can I ask a question before I move to the other
Sure.
side? Before I do this.
Sure.
I remember when we first started having this conversation about this new development. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but we were requesting for a portion to offer to our staff. I remember it vaguely. Is that
Yes.
offer still on? Because I
Yeah.
don't see it on your slide.
Yes, and I think it's on another slide,
Oh,
but
okay.
not there
As-
yet.
as long as
But
on-
I'll just, so I don't forget in case it's not on a slide,
Okay.
there are 27, because I think I haven't moved to the first phase yet. I'm talking generally. So maybe I'll wait till we get to the next to talk about
Okay,
the
I
first
won't
phase of the
ask.
development.
Thank
Yeah, but I will talk about that. So good question.
That was 24.
I'll advance it.
For the
I
number,
thought it was 24.
well, I will double check on my thing, but I think it's
Okay.
27.
No,
I believe it's on one of the slides.
What's that?
I believe that.
Yes, okay. Yeah, you confirm me on that. Yeah, if you want to move to the next slide, and I think we're talking about phase
I'm
one.
like, where did he go?
So,
You go to the
this
next
is the
slide.
phase, this is the first of the 4 phases that I was mentioning. So this is what's under construction right now. And this was the former location of the park. And it's 2 apartment buildings that are being built right now, just under 150 units. It includes, different community spaces, a youth center, a youth learning center where those after-school programs I mentioned would take place, outdoor play area, community room, and a garage. That 65% complete number, I think we're a little past that now. We're about 70, 75. And we're looking to complete this work in November of this year. So if you go to the next slide, yes, this has the preference piece I wanted to bring up. So 60 of the existing Midway Village residents who live there now would be moving into this development. And then all the additional units, 85 households, and that doesn't include the 2 that are reserved for a community manager, a mid-pen employee. 85 apartments would be rented to people who are new, who aren't from the existing Midway Village. 27 of the apartments have a preference for employees of Daly City school districts.
And how would you rate the rent price, the pricing on that one?
So so basically the way it works is, the way to answer that question is I can't speak to those specific units, but sort
Okay.
of broadly about how the units rents are set. We have, since there's units out of a range of tiers of income, so for people who might be considered very low or on the extremely low to more like moderate income, there's a real range in between. But if you look at overall the development, the units at the low end, you may have, and we have a range of unit sizes too. So you have studios and then all the way up to 3-4 bedroom units. So, a lot of the units are in the maybe $2,000.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
You say Daly City school districts.
Right.
So it's not pertaining to Bayshore.
It includes Bayshore. It's the broader.
Do you know that Jefferson, they have their own staff? It's going on, they're still building.
Right.
I thought that was just for Bayshore.
No, and the reason it's not, and I can definitely explain
Okay.
why that's a choice we have to make, is because when deciding on something like a preference, we have to follow what's called fair housing law. So that means we can't say these units are only reserved for this limited number of people, if limiting it for a small number of people would create what's called a disparate impact. For example, we have to make sure the demographics that we have a preference set aside for of people are broadly matching the community. So we have to do an analysis to make sure we're being fair when we look at how we're going to set aside preference. So we have to look at a broader area than just, in this case, one school district. We have to look at a broader set of school districts to make sure we're being basically fair to consider the broader demographics.
Are those legal aspects that you're?
Right. They're based on federal. Essentially, we have to follow federal law, which requires that we have to, when we have a preference, we have to make sure we're meeting that requirement.
Would it be
I'm just being
also
selfish.
fair to point out that what you're saying, Trustee, is that since Jefferson Union High School District and Jefferson Elementary School Districts have their own housing projects happening that are prioritized for perhaps that portion of the population, that could potentially work in our employees' favor because of the fact that they would perhaps the employees of those districts may prefer to inhabit one of those housing projects versus our housing.
Right. I think that's a good.
not
Or
ours,
maybe
but-
first
So
dibs for
choices.
Bayshore.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we have to be in like I mentioned, we have to be sort of
I
broadly.
think there's a way to do that.
Well, we definitely did a lot of research to make sure we were
Okay.
doing it. I hear the concern there, and I understand why. That's maybe a point of contention. I think that's a good point about why with the other projects that are in development as well, why in practical effect, and we want to make sure this happens through the marketing work that we do. There may be more from this district that may be interested or maybe that may apply. But from an openness, it will be open to a more broader group. So the application period where people can start applying to live here is beginning this summer. So late spring, summer. Usually we start about 6 months before the community is complete. So we're looking at November for finishing construction, and May to June would be around when we would start to get ready and then open the wait list and have people apply. And we would certainly welcome your input and help in getting the word out as much as possible. So we produce marketing materials and we would distribute that as far and wide, and definitely welcome your help in making sure that everyone, including all school district employees who may be interested, can hear about it. And then move-ins would be happening, once we complete construction. Do you want to go to the next slide? So the second phase after this first one is phase 2. So that is when you look at that picture, you saw earlier, it's more on the north side of the site, which is going to be 110 units, and that's also including the redevelopment of the childcare center. That's a little bit further off. We're more sort of in the planning and figuring out how the financing of it stages right now. So these dates are a little bit more tentative, but ideally we're looking to start that second half of next year. And also that includes a portion of the units there that will be reserved for people who are existing residents of Midway Village. Next slide. And then finally, there's future phases as well. I know this looks really far off right now because it is phased in this way. So there's a lot of work ahead, and sort of these areas of the site are more what we're looking down the road a little bit, and that will also include townhomes, a larger park for residents, community center, and a lot of new streets and landscaping that are going to go through the middle of the site. And then the last part after this piece are done would be the development of the Bayshore Park. So Midpen is not the lead on that piece; that's the city, but is obviously a critical part of the project as well.
Does phase 5 have to wait until all the other phases are done?
Yes, it does. I'm pretty sure because
It's the city.
it's not about the city. It's actually a little bit more about the way the current site looks with the existing tenants and with currently on phase 5 right now on that part of the site right now. So that's why it has to be sequentially done in this way. I'm not pretty sure. I am sure. Yeah.
So in regards to the remaining phases, when it comes to the townhomes,
Mhm.
some of those are going to be able to be purchased, right?
Right. So
And
you
they're
yeah.
EMR, and they're also, is there a specific area where you say the school staff or that Daly City schools are going to be placed? That's back in, I guess, phase.
Yeah, so
Two?
that's the first phase where we
First
have
phase.
right now we have some units that are included set aside. I mean, I think for the future phases, like a lot of those details and like a preference, that stuff hasn't quite been figured out yet. I think that would be a continuing conversation about any preferences or any things for these next phases. They're really early on, so a lot of those details we haven't worked out, but we do include a preference for those 27 units. That's in phase 1. That's right here. So this one includes those 27 units that have the preference for school district.
And they're not townhomes.
No.
Also, I had a question too about who is your development team? I would like to get in contact with somebody that I haven't been able to reach. And
Okay.
I'm just trying to find out information about the current residents and what options we have.
Well, it would probably be me to start
Okay,
with, so I
good.
can give you my.
Are you the new project manager?
I'm not the project manager, but I'm very involved working closely with the project manager. Yes.
I would like your information.
Sure.
Are you going to have any disabled housings?
So we always include a certain number of units that are built to accommodate people with disabilities.
How many do you have?
It's usually at 10% that are set aside for, and that's also required by law as well. In addition, we also have reasonable accommodation policies. So if someone, is not in a unit that is for someone with a disability, but says, I have this thing going on or something happens, we have a process by which they can notify us and explain what the issue is that requires some, potentially change to the unit or relocation unit or that sort of thing.
Also, I'm sorry, are you done, Teresa? Go ahead. So the latest information that I received from a mid-pen services coordinator,
Okay.
there were upwards to 66 seniors that are currently living there. And it was requested way back in the times that we were doing design planning, and that some of the seniors were requesting that you provide seniors with an area, or in the new development, separate from this whole, I don't know, the way you have it located now. Is there an area for seniors and, due to the health issues?
Yeah. Yeah, let me, I think that's something I should follow up with you more on, because I think there's elements of the phase 3, phase 4 piece that I'm still getting a little bit on board with myself because I'm a little bit new to that piece of it. So I think I want to follow up on that a little bit more about the senior piece, because I know there is definitely a different a population of seniors there as well that may need some specialized and different services
Very
and
much.
spaces. Yeah.
Yeah, so all this was happening in the beginning,
Mhm.
and I think Matt Lewis was the
Right.
project manager.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of turnover, and
Right.
it's hard to have a contact with anybody.
Well, I'm happy to be that contact.
He will be, you're looking at him.
Yeah.
You promise.
This
do.
will be for you.
Okay.
And
And I'll give you my card after this.
thank you.
You can go to the next slide. So I just wanted to make sure I also just covered with the ongoing construction right now, and naturally being near a construction site, we get questions about soil, dust, noise, things like that are ongoing. There was soil that was on site that had contamination in it that we have to very proactively manage. So all of the work going on right now is really heavily regulated by a state agency called the Department of Toxic Substance Control that oversees this whole thing and monitors it. But we have a lot of proactive measures during the construction to make sure that we're avoiding any impacts to the neighbors. So that includes things like fencing, like active monitoring of noise and dust and air quality, and a lot of proactive measures to limit any dust from coming up on site, and then really not having everyone drive on and off all site all day, but really have people workers park off site and then be brought on site together, so we don't have a ton of people coming on and off all the time. And then last slide. So I think lastly, I just wanted to emphasize the continued partnership with the school district. We are we're excited to continue to come here and update. And I know we have a resident services point person who's also available to be the primary contact for more questions about the working with residents and the services side of things that we do. We are excited for the possibility of continued planning and enrollment of new households for Midway Village over the coming 7 years.
One more question.
Yes.
Do you plan to have a community or resident community meeting soon? Like you're bringing these slides here.
Right.
The residents have not had a community meeting in over 2 years or more. And I know maybe during, the time of pandemic, it was a problem, but there's there's very little communication.
Yes, and it's really good time for you to be asking that because we are definitely in need of one, and we're actually looking to do one in the next, I would say, 2 months. So nothing confirmed yet, but absolutely before we start the lease up process, we will be doing resident community meeting. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
I have one last
Sure.
question. So it was told to us and Audra, our previous, our last superintendent, that some of the townhomes will be for the first time home buyers and the BMRs. Is those still going to be available?
Yeah, if you want to go back a few slides. So what we're proposing here is for the phase 4, the plan is to have 20 townhomes that are going to go for sale and yes, below.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions. And in same regard of the park, you may be deferring to another entity, and that's fine. First I wanted to say I'd like to note the contribution that the Bayshore community as a whole has done with this project to add this number of affordable housing. This is a huge project. It's significantly enlarging the capacity of this community as a whole. One of the concerns as far as the school is concerned is safety. And again, you may defer to other entities, but I'll go ahead and ask the question. So bottom line is there's going to be less parking because based on the number of units that there are now versus what there will be and the number of parking spots now versus what there will be, the ratio is actually going down. So there's going to be more cars driving around the neighborhood trying to find parking. And I'm just curious, is there any talk between MidPenn and the city regarding safety, regards to traffic and cars?
Well, I would say yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if I can give you, a super thorough answer about, the exact details of how that's going to work at this point. Every time we are building something, traffic and pedestrian safety and transportation demand management, basically having a plan in place to, make it as easy as possible to not have to use cars is always sort of a built-in part of the project. I can't speak to the exact details of what's going on here in that respect. And I think I would have to research it more to follow up with you, and I'm happy to do that. But I would say that is sort of an absolute major focus, knowing that parking is just one of the most common community issues we hear about every time.
Yeah. Okay. Because, and again, I'm not saying that this is in the community at large.
Right.
You've got homes that are zoned for single family and they're not. There's more than one family living in them. And again, I understand that there is a housing shortage. Is there any sort of auditing that will occur to ensure that units that are zoned for a certain capacity are maintained within that capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I will say for development like Mid-Penn, I
Yeah.
think the difference from the scenario you're talking about is that we have Mid-Penn employees who live on site who are very involved
Okay.
in the lives of our residents, not in an invasive way, but just
Right.
naturally sort of know what's going on. So, we have terms of our lease that are, what's allowed, and you can't have, obviously there's a limit on how many people you could have in a certain number in an apartment. So it doesn't allow for, overcrowding, what would be called overcrowding. And we have, I think, a pretty active sense about, what if that's being violated and respond to it.
So I was just thinking about what Trustee Brown was saying about seniors and noise ordinances and stuff like that. So that was just a concern there. I think that was all I had at this point. Oh, I did have, sorry, I apologize. So I appreciate all the services that you had listed though. Are any of those services available to non-Mid-Penn, Midway Village residents? Okay.
I nodded acknowledging your question. I think, but I don't know if any of them are. I mean, obviously the park is a public park, but the services, I would have to double check on that. I'm not sure if any out of hand are. I know there have been cases where for the after school programs, if we aren't at capacity, that they have been
So there's
available.
a priority if you're
Definitely, yes. Okay. But other than that, sort of the other sort of programs I discussed do tend to be specifically for Mid-Penn residents.
And then obviously I know that there's limited space on the site. Has Mid-Penn had any conversations with the city about availability of grocery stores and other services like that?
Yes.
Trader Joe's.
Trader Joe's.
Yeah.
Sprouts.
I didn't want to name brand.
I was not the, so again, that's one of those things where the history of the project predates me a little bit. So I don't doubt that there absolutely have been. The site plan is pretty formed at this point, if that's the sort of the question. But in terms of, a general consideration about grocery stores, generally, I'm sure that conversation has happened.
Okay.
I know the site plan as a whole is pretty established.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't expect the site plan to change, but if, obviously because Mid-Penn's been around for a while and
Right.
they've done sites all over the place. So if you're bringing in 555 units, that's, at least a couple thousand people. And we're already, we're currently and have been a food desert for years. And so I'm just curious as if there's been any conversations between Mid-Penn and the city to try and.
Just more advocating for some.
Yes,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
exactly.
See, I don't think they're in that position yet. They're just want to build and put people in there, and they're not even looking at the long run for what the impact of this is going to happen. And this is when I'm seeing the programs and when you say that particularly just for Mid-Penn, that's something I want to crush, like to be open to everybody, not to be isolated, like you're going to not having your programs to be allowed other, residents of Bayshore to come have a taste of it because it's only for Mid-Penn. My goal for this whole community is to come together, maybe in the long run to even have your programs to be a little bit more sensitive in that part, to be more inclusive instead of closed doors,
Yeah, I hear you. And I think, I'm happy to continue that conversation.
I see it too as an opportunity to collaborate, but I also see that the city already does not collaborate. The city of Daly City and the Park and Recs or whatever, they have programs and Midway Village is not invited. So it has to be a two-way street.
And I guess just one other quick comment regarding that it does impact the school directly is parking. And obviously, there will be a certain number of parking spaces for the residents of Midway, but we all know, at least in this area, given the lack of public transportation, a lot of people have multiple cars per unit, even including the community as well. And that is going to make it, we are in urban school district, so there is a very limited number of spaces in our lot. So a lot of our staff have to find street parking. And so I'm just saying that is going to be an impact for us to consider as well.
And garbage.
Oh, yeah. I guess that's having someone on site monitoring for dumping. That is a chronic issue along Shoreen right now, is dumping, illegal dumping. So
I want to thank everyone for their questions, but I do want to add one question. Have we projected the amount of students that might come out of this project?
Heck no, not yet.
No, I think that's something we're planning on still
Okay,
working with you on as we get towards the.
I know.
And let me clarify myself. I don't know if we may already have an answer for that, but it's something I would have to dig up and follow up for the number. Because we typically do have a formula for a family property that's open to families, how many students that would
It would be great to get that.
So we can follow up with that.
Right, that projection. Okay, thank you.
But put out the word there about the school that we have here. Okay, for your clients. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Some
Thank you
questions for us.
Thank you so much for
Mr.
your
Vila?
presentation.
It's good,
Thank you.
good information.
All right,
Oh, Lord, it's 8 o'clock.
next item on the agenda, 2022-2023 second interim financial report. I'd like to hand this over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, thank you. So you may recall that we did our first interim report, and so this is a follow-up for the second interim. I want to start by saying a strong appreciation for my finance team, Ms. Legaspi, Sandra Stent, and Vanita Singh. Vanita Singh is the CBO support from the county office that we partnered with. And Sandra Stent is our CBO angel. I affectionately call her supports to us, our former CBO and still on our team. And Vanita did the big lift of this report, so I hope to do her proud. The second slide, please, Mr. Dyson. So I'll just go through these slides. And we'll pause after each slide just to get any clarifying questions, but they're pretty straightforward. So per the Ed Code section 42130, we have to submit 2 reports to the governing board for the district each fiscal year. As I mentioned, the first interim report was done in the period ending October 31st. And so this interim report covers the period from then until now, up to January 31st. And the purpose of the reports, or the goal that we're trying to achieve, is to be certified as positive, which means that this 3-year projection report will meet the financial obligations for the current and 2 subsequent fiscal years. The next certifications are qualified and negative, but I'm happy to say that we are certifying our 3-year projection as positive. Next slide, please. So this 3-year multi-year projection is based on a few things, one of which is the governor's proposed budget. You'll see that there is a proposed increase in COLA up to 13.26% for the 22-23 school year. The proposed COLA increase for the 23-24 school year went from a projection of 5.38 up to 8.13. So that is something that is considered in these projections. And additionally, the third year 24-25 proposed COLA is actually reflected as a decrease from 4.02% down to 3.54%. Now, this LCFF funding is projected to increase in the 23-24 school year due to this increase in COLA that I mentioned, and then reduce in the subsequent years. And the funding is based on ADA and COLA decreases. Average daily attendance is ADA. So what you do is you take an average of the 3 prior years, and what we are projecting is that we will continue to have a decline in our average daily attendance. So it's currently funded on a projection of 370.09. The projected funding number for 23-24 is 345.22, and then for 24-25 is a projected number of 321.78. The other thing that you'll see in this projection is the impact of 2 new one-time restricted block grants. Those are the Learning Recovery Emergency Block Grant that needs to be spent by 27-28, and the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Discretionary Block Grant that needs to be spent in total by 25-26. So these are included in the revenue and restricted ending balances that you will see on subsequent slides. And on the horizon for 23-24, we'll continue spending the ESSER and Expanded Learning Opportunities Program funds that we have received previously. And you'll see a consideration of projected retirement system rates. So while the current STRS projection looks to stay steady over the next 3 years, PERS is actually increasing over the next 3 years. So all of these things are going to be reflected in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. So these are just particular highlights of the major adjustments from our first report that we talked about in October to now. So on the revenue side, you'll see that there are state revenues increasing from one-time discretionary block grants that I mentioned before. Local donations and grants recorded as received include the Kaiser grant, the donor advised, and the MTSS seed grant. So those are things that were included after the first interim that you'll see reflected. And then there's a slight reduction in a contribution for our in our special ed funding. The expenses include health and welfare budgeted costs to be adjusted to reflect the new rates effective January 1. There was online learning expenses for board trustees and then our attendance at the CSBA conference that were included. And then we did replace 4 surveillance cameras and had a sprinkler inspection for the fire system, our fire safety system, and then a lovely bird net installed in the lunch area. So those were all expenditures that happened between first and second interim. There was no change in staffing, so there was no reflection of those costs between the 2 interim reports. Any questions so far? Okay, great. Okay, so slide number 5 shows the multi-year comparison between what was reported in the first interim. Oops, are we not showing? Okay, sorry about that. Do you have it pulled up from the agenda? Trustees, would you like me to continue moving through?
Yeah, I'm following through here.
Okay. Those of you following along should be able to find the attachments on the agenda. So I'll continue. So this is a multi-year projection, as I had said. So on the left-hand side, you'll see what was reported in first interim. And then on the right-hand side is what is being reported for second interim. I will point out that we're well above the required 4% minimum in reserves with both report periods, and that you can find at the very bottom, the bottom row, the reserve percentage is listed for both interim report projections, and we're well above the minimum requirement of 4%.
What's the recommended percentage?
The minimum required is 4%. That varies district to district. Actually, when I was talking with the CBO, she says that some districts put in their board policies an actual percentage that they don't want to go under. That's not in any of our board policies. I don't know if that might be something you would want to consider in the future. But the way that budget approvals is looked at from the state, they will not approve a budget that goes under 4%.
Usually between 4 and 6, right? 4 and 6%.
Are you saying
Depending.
that would be the
I
what
think that
some
would be the
districts
recommend.
do?
Yeah.
I heard 10%.
I've heard higher, yes.
Okay.
I've heard anywhere between 12 and 17, but that's also not necessarily LCFF funded,
Right.
but districts. If we continue to the next slide, this just highlights some of the information in that previous slide. What's highlighted are the LCFF sources that were considered in this. So the revenues adjusted for the COLA that I mentioned and the governor's proposed budget. We have federal revenues decreasing due to spending down of the ESSER monies and the COVID funds that are needing to be spent by 24-25. We have state revenues, so the removal of some discretionary block grants that have, oh, thank you. Yay. Great problem solving, Mr. Dyson. We have, so I was on the third highlight on the page, the spending out of some grants that we have received will be part of what impacts the second interim projections, as well as local grants and donations that were received. And as I mentioned, the contribution, the 23-24 SPED contribution increasing slightly. So those are the revenues. The next slide highlights the expenditures expected in second interim. So step and column in salaries and benefits are one aspect of what we see in second interim, as well as some of the spending happening from E-rate, ESSER 2, and other restricted funding, and then operating expenses, some of the removal of those restricted funding sources that I mentioned before. And then lastly, this slide is a highlight of the ending balance from that larger first interim and second interim comparison. Let me just make sure I am mentioning. Basically, the increase is an increase of $712,000, which is a reflection of those two big block grants. And one thing that our finance team wanted me to emphasize is in that box there that despite a greater ending balance due to an increase in COLA in 23-24, we should note that the district will be deficit spending as highlighted in that last column for 24-25. And although it's by a small margin, it is something that we need to keep in mind. Now, I will say that the 3-year projection and you're looking at the funding in that third year, not a lot of weight can be put in that per se because of the changes that happen every year in funding. So it's important to keep in mind, and that's why we have to do a 3-year projection. But there's so much that can change between now and then. Just something to note. I believe. Oh, and then the last slide is just where we are in the timeline. So as I mentioned, the first interim went before you in December for approval. We did the audit report that we're actually going to. It's on a later the auditor and approving the contract with the auditor is a later topic of conversation, but the auditor provided a report in January. We're presenting now the second interim, and the last conversation we will have is the unaudited actuals in the fall.
Has there been
Great.
any conversation from the state regarding moving away from ADA funding?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's disappointing.
I'm also, I mean, I can't say that I'm an expert or fully informed, so that's something I can look into if you'd like me to. But it's not been part of any conversation.
Okay.
We've been, the last superintendent symposium in Monterey, we had a panel discussion about the budget, the governor's budget, and this this waffling COLA projection. There was, at one point, it was kind of a solid assumption at 8%, and now we're hearing like, no, it's actually going to be closer to 5%. So there's not discussion there. There wasn't any mention of any change in the focus of the funding. It was more just on the fluidity of not being able to predict the budget. Okay, so I believe the recommendation is that you vote to approve, if there are no questions.
Does anyone have any questions on the second interim financial report? No questions? Need a motion and a second to approve the 2022-23 second interim financial report. All in favor? I'm sorry. Motion first.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, aye.
Thank you. The last item under business and fiscal services is what I just alluded to. We work with an auditor that provides that conducts our audits. And it is recommended that you get a new auditor every 6 years to make sure that your perspective is fresh, I guess. And so we are asking that you approve the contract renewal with our current auditor. This will take us through those 6 years with this particular auditor, and then we will need to contract with a different auditor at the ending of this contract.
Any board trustees have any questions with regards to approval of the district auditor's contract? We're 23 to 25.
Nope.
Need a motion and a second to approve.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 4-0 unanimous. Thank you. We'll move on to number 10, superintendent reports.
Hey.
And A, Culture and Climate Subcommittee update. I'd like to hand this over to Superintendent Veal.
Okay, well, our subcommittee members, Trustee Rudolph and Trustee Avalana and myself, have been meeting to review the results that came in from the second Cultural and Climate Survey that was extended to the Bayshore staff. And I believe, Trustee Rudolph, you are going to start the conversation with a history of context for the purpose, or was that
I was
Trustee
gonna-
Avalana?
Yeah.
President
Okay,
Avalana.
thank you. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. You want to just, do you want to go over the data?
Go ahead and do the introduction.
Okay.
And I'll take over.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
The next slide, sorry. Thank you. Nope, this is good.
no, this is good. Yeah. So with regards to the survey, culture and climate that was initially given in the spring of 2022, there were many factors and our intent of wanting to get that survey out to the staff at that time. There were many things that were surfacing during this time, and we wanted to get an idea from our staff of what are underlining things that are going on. And there were questions with regards to leadership. There was questions regarding things that were happening in the school, within our school district. And we wanted to get a better idea of communicating with our staff, just to get an idea of what the climate was at that time. And then we did it again late this fall, coming into the spring. And what we want to do at this time is we're going to lean towards hiring a professional survey, culture and climate survey service moving forward. And it's going to give us a better opportunity to reach out to different areas with staff, parents, stakeholders, and our students. So at this time, we just want to kind of close the loop and move forward. I'll go ahead and hand this over to you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was just going to kind of build off of, I had already shared some of the little snippets in our last board meeting to the other board members. And just wanted to clarify, when President Abiana said closed loop, doesn't mean we're still using the data. So I'll come back to that in a minute. So a couple of the data points that I just wanted to share with the other board members here is there was a slight reduction in participation, about 10% less participated. Based on an informal research, two contributing factors, there could be more, but two known contributing factors were fatigue, survey fatigue by the staff. And there was some, apparently on the second time we went around, there was some confusion around what the questions were asking. And so some folks didn't necessarily feel comfortable filling it out because they didn't understand it, which goes back to what President Abiana said is the subcommittee is going to recommend moving forward with a professional service that professionally designs these surveys and gives them. And that will help alleviate the fact that this was definitely an ad hoc. It was done out of a necessity of, there was just, seemed like we were getting different feedback. And there was a difference in feedback between different entities within the school. So the second point were the scores overall, again, and I mentioned this in the last meeting, they're about the same. It was relatively flat. There were a couple questions that increased in a good way, and a couple of questions that went down slightly. Nothing exceeded more than 7% in either way. So the questions that I shared that went up last time was, I feel a sense of belonging at Bayshore, and that went up. And then the other one that went up by 8% was, I feel comfortable going to the administration with a concern. The two that went down, and this is where I just, I think going with the continued work that the administration is going on, the continued direction that the board is providing and working with partnering with the administration, this will be alleviated. But the two that went down was, I feel excited about the future of Bayshore, and I believe meaningful action will be taken as a result of this survey, which could have also gone down based off of fatigue. So again, it's an anonymous survey, so there's really no way for us to find out. Then I wanted to move on to the text responses. So there were numerous text responses, and I'd like to say thank you to those that provided the detailed text responses, those that gave specific details that they enable us to take action on. Those have been, obviously the superintendent has received all of that feedback and is working with the subcommittee in categorizing them. And we're trying to follow kind of a bucket process. And actually, I will let Superintendent Veal talk more about that at the end of my conversation here. And then, yeah, again, just to, again, kind of to wrap it up, just the future, we're looking into utilizing a professional service for providing this survey. And as President Abiana mentioned, that would also allow us to increase the scope of the audience to also allow us to capture data from parents and the students as well. So did either of the board members have any questions regarding the data?
Okay, so first of all, maybe it's not the survey, maybe it's the questions you guys have in the survey.
Could be.
Maybe get the feedback from the staff, some of the staff, what kind of questions you wanted to be on the survey.
That is a great thing. I'm glad that you brought that up because that actually came up in the subcommittee meeting. Is I believe the scope of, and this was actually with feedback from staff as well, is the scope was confusing. And I think that's also, given that it was a homegrown survey, kind of trying to, pardon the expression, but it was a Band-Aid approach to try and solve what was concerned as, at the time, an urgent issue. I think that going with a professional entity to deliver the survey will exactly, I'm glad that you brought that up. It will definitely hit on that of, they're going to know what the right questions are to be asking and how to scope it correctly. And it's like, so for me as an individual board member, what I wanted to get from the survey was how does the staff feel? Are they happy here or not?
Yeah, but that's a broad question.
It is.
And it's kind of personal.
It's like what, happy? Yeah, I'm happy.
But again, so no, and this is where the subcommittee discussed this of, it wasn't comprehensive enough to necessarily solve problems. It was more just an opportunity for staff to provide feedback, anonymous feedback to the board. And to be honest, very generic and general. So it could be any sort of feedback to the board. So that is, I think, why I think moving forward, it would be best for us to utilize a professional service because they will be able to tailor it specifically to whatever scope we want it to be defined as. And I think that's another question that would need to happen before we implement it.
How many questions were there?
There were, I can tell you specifically. On the, yes, there were
15?
Yeah, there were, well, it actually kind of overlapped. Some of the questions overlapped, but yeah, there was basically 15.
So I have a suggestion. So why don't we organize it again, restructure it, modify it, with the feedback from the teachers, from the staff. And then we go this third round. This third is, and if we see it that it's still the same thing, then we proceed into hiring somebody professional to take over.
Well, I would like to at least have the opportunity to maybe have us get a demo from one or two organizations and see the benefit of it. it is a lot of work to put together a good survey. And that's why I fully admit, it's like, was our survey good? Well, let me back up. I think we need to also ask our question of, why do we want to give this survey? At the time, it was out of a sense of urgency because there was a disconnect in communication. We were receiving communication from one side that was saying one thing, and yet we were receiving communication from another side that didn't. And I'm not saying one was right and one was wrong, but it was conflicting. And so out of a sense of urgency, this survey was put together and sent out.
So maybe a breakdown of the survey in components, like about you, your workplace, optional comments, additional demographics. Break it down in those areas, and particularly for those areas, and not too broad.
Well,
you
I
know?
think we got to rewind a little bit, because we got to ask ourselves, why did we intentionally want to do the survey to begin with?
Why?
We've never done surveys in this district, and there was information that we wanted to get from within our staff here, because we sensed that there was a lot of things that were happening. There was no transparency and no communication between staff, administration, and board. Okay, so what we did, there was also the BTA presentation that we also received. So there was a lot of information that had surfaced during that time. If we're in a situation of what we don't know, we cannot do as a board. We cannot take action on things we don't know. So with that being said, there was a reason why we intentionally had done this survey. And it wasn't done through a professional service. The surveys that we're looking for later that will really help us in our strategic planning and our board goals and bring in this district in alignment, that's going to be done, I believe, through a professional service. It's not going to be done by just the board.
And do you think that you're going to get the 100% participation that you're predicting if we have a professional?
You know what? As individually, as a trustee, yes, I believe
Okay.
that, because as we can see the work that we're doing collectively together, that this is what we have to do. It's either we start it now or it'll never happen. So we're shifting in a different direction. We're changing the culture of where we've been and now where we want to be in our future here. And ultimately, it's for the students.
Well, let me just remind all of us this. Each individual staff that comes on this campus, they have their own strengths and areas that they're currently working on. I feel like even with the survey, it's only going to cover probably, like you said, a Band-Aid. But deep core and all that, we can't change individuals that way. We can never make them come forward and tell what they need, because every individual that comes on board have their own ways of sharing, or to communicate, or to cooperate, or to become a community staff member. So I'm just looking at the part that it can be a sensitive. Giving a survey, I don't like surveys, to be honest with you. Giving a survey to me, it's like micromanaging, like you're what do I need to do? And it's gonna be just like filling out, are they truthfully telling the truth, filling those surveys? We see how it is with the second surveys that we did. Do we have any change? Are we seeing any change? Yes, there is change.
I'm sure you've seen the change, but
yes, there is change.
The question
But
is,
we need to be very careful with what the expectations are we giving out to the staff. I don't want us to pressure the staff to fill a survey. I just don't. I just don't.
I mean, there's the whole carrot or the stick. It's like, I think what we need to do is first amongst the board as a whole is, if we do a survey again, make sure we have a clear scope as to what the goal is. What problem are we trying to solve by doing this survey? And then if we define something like that, then make sure that there is a clear process defined that incentivizes the staff to take it. Yeah, if I was a staff member, and again, the fact that the score went down in, I believe, meaningful action will come from this. I mean, if we give another survey without providing that information, I think it'll continue to go down. So I think there definitely needs to be a clear goal and, what we're trying to accomplish. And I think that's part of what, when we were talking about using a professional service, that's what they do. They will come in, and part of the whole survey process is it specifies why you as an individual should contribute to this survey, why you should take this survey. What is it going to help facilitate for you?
Would also they would be able to set a standard on how often you should administer a survey, because having so many surveys is, like the fatigue you're talking about. Yes, it's happening too often.
But no, Teresa, I completely hear what you're saying.
If I may, one of the things that you brought up, Trustee Fapua, was like a categorization of some of the results and what maybe came from our discussion around those things. So I just wanted to highlight something that we did talk about that that hasn't been mentioned. In general, when you're trying to weigh someone's content or feelings of happiness, I guess, for lack of a better word, things kind of fall into three buckets, and I'm stealing this from you, Trustee Rudolph, in our analysis. So systems, process, and people. Those are kind of the big overarching themes that one would measure in this kind of survey. And I think that in our discussion, especially with we did meet with President Pape of the BTA union, and she, I appreciated our conversation with her around the feedback that she was able to provide, that unit members shared with her about the survey, and the some of the confusion and or just the curiosities about why are we administering, what are we hoping to get from this. And I think that the emphasis, that came out of our conversation is how can we make next steps meaningful and intentional, so that there does show some benefit to providing your input and letting us know, opening those lines of communication and letting us know how people feel, so that we can be intentional about revisiting and reflecting on, where things are. So going into next steps, in addition to potentially seeking an outside service to more accurately design questions that would give us more insight into people's feelings of content being here. I think also the work that we're doing or moving forward in doing with our strategic planning and the alignment of board priorities, our district and site goals, and the work, what that looks like in the classrooms, is really going to help to address some of the frustrations that have been shared, and some of the disconnect that we're wanting to address. So I am hopeful, as I was hearing what Brandy and Whitney was sharing about the process, and our own experiences with the work with Dr. Smith. I am hopeful, and I'm glad that Brandy mentioned that, because I do see this as an opportunity to have structured conversation where multiple voices are being heard, and that we're working collectively towards a common goal. So in terms of next steps, whether we, you decide that you want to pursue a professional survey process, or that we just find another way to hold ourselves accountable for the work that we intend to do over the next several years, so that we are we can confidently say that as a student leaves Bayshore in 8th grade, we have worked together intentionally through a process of an iterative process of reflection and tweaking plans and making sure that the outcomes are being achieved, that the students will be able to leave here in a way that reflects a strength in their whole person that they can contribute to their new high school community. So I'm very hopeful in terms of next steps, and we're beginning to define those next steps.
Right.
Okay. So the next thing that I wanted to report out on is something that I shared at the staff meeting yesterday with regard to our principal search process. And I would like to get your input and thoughts as a board in terms of how you would like to participate in this process. And I'll give you a couple of options. The tentative timeline right now is to have the position posted for 2 weeks towards the end of March. So from March 20th to March 31st. After the 31st, that first week of April is spring break. So to resume then after the position is closed, we'll do a screening of the applications the week of April 10th, an interview of the applicants the week of April 17th. And then I intend to conduct what I have experienced myself, which is a superintendent site visit for the final 2 candidates that are recommended from the committee after the interviews. And what that consists of is myself going out to the workplace of the applicants. So there is an assumption here that we might have applicants that are current site administrators, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. The purpose of a site visit is to see the alignment between what we see on paper and have heard from the candidates to real life. When I was explaining to the staff yesterday, that I had a very intense process when I interviewed to be a principal in the Hillsborough City School District. There were multiple panels of several people. And then the final, one of the final steps was the superintendent coming to my site, interviewing teachers, parent leaders, my executive assistant, and getting their perspective of my leadership. I'm not going to put somebody through that extensive visit, but I am going to speak to people who work with the candidate to get a sense of the leadership and to see if that leadership is what we're looking for. Then this is where I would like to know what your participation, what you would think your participation is. I've been in different districts who do different things. I do think your input as a board is an important perspective for me to have as I make my final decision about the next principal. And I think that can happen in a couple of different ways. So one option is to have a board member serve as part of the committee that would be doing the screenings and the interview. The other option would be for me to help you facilitate a board interview of the final 2 candidates, and then for you to share your thoughts with me as I make the final decision. So I'd like to hear your thoughts about either option, or if you would just like to have me conduct the interview with the committee members or the process with the committee members and present the candidate for a final board approval at the May 11th meeting.
I'm sorry, is that going to include stakeholders, parents as well?
So committee members at a minimum
Right.
are 3 classified staff, 3 certificated staff, PTO executive board representative, and myself at the minimum. So it depends. I've I mentioned to staff yesterday for people to let me know their interest. I do think it is critical, and I have gotten confirmation that office staff would be a part of the committee as well. But and by office staff, I mean Ms. Bowman, Ms. Sabado, and Ms. Legospi. I do want another classified member if someone comes to say that they would like to be representing that portion of our stakeholder group. 3 certificated staff, but I will have an equal number of certificated staff as classified staff. So if we have more classified staff, then I'll have more certificated. I also want to make sure that it's not an overwhelming number of people. So there are some decisions that will have to be made there. And in terms of another stakeholder, looking at our parent leadership, so it would be someone from the parent executive board.
For the PTO, that's mostly everybody on the executive board are classified.
So we do have 2 staff members who are on the executive board, one of whom is not a parent at the school, so I wouldn't include him as an option for a PTO representation. I would want a current parent of the
Right,
school who's
because-
serving that.
yeah.
So we do have 3.
That part is
Just
the parent, not
that par- not because they're what are they presenting? Staff or PTO executive board? It should be a parent
yes.
that it's not
Right, they're a
in the
parent.
I
PTO.
agree with you.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, what you're saying, so someone in the PTO but not on the executive
They don't
board,
have
or
to
you're
be.
saying?
They don't have
PTO.
to be a PTO
No.
member too. A
Just an
community member, a
interested
parent.
Yeah,
So maybe just one
too many executives.
PTO member, and then maybe a parent.
So I might be splitting words. So you're saying one executive board PTO member
Right.
and then one parent who is a part of the PTO because they're a parent.
Not necessarily
Not necessarily
a
the
part of the
PTO, I mean-
PTO.
No.
Because not every parent is a member of the PTO.
Correct.
I think maybe a
Right,
person
but-
who has done a lot in the community. A person who,
Well, they should be a parent.
right,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that should, well, yeah,
Yeah.
that's who we're speaking
Just,
about.
yeah.
So,
Right. So my purpose of saying a PTO representative is that you have a parent who is part of the parent leadership here,
Mhm.
who has proven that they are a dedicated member of the parent community and have given time towards their leadership to make connections with the rest of the community.
yes.
But it shouldn't
But what
be
I'm
like
hearing
that.
you say is that it doesn't necessarily have to be
Have
an
to be a
executive
PTO.
board member.
Because who are we to judge if they, the reason why they can't be on the PTO, because they have so many other applications that it's unmeasurable for them to participate. I think the invitation should go out to a parent that will like to do it, that will want to be part of the panel.
I agree.
I honestly think that the board, this is out of the board. This is on you, the superintendent, because it's going to be under somebody. So all my thing is my expectation that you will do a good job,
Mhm.
So having the board too, it's going to be too much, so I will stay out of it as a board member, but I trust, that who's ever going to sit on that panel that is going to decide who the best candidate to be here to serve our community and our children.
Thank you.
I'll throw my hat in the ring because I don't mind being on a panel. I've done many panels, hiring high school teachers, hiring principals. So it's not a problem for me. Excuse me, my voice.
Okay. Any other
Rudolph?
comments?
No, listening to both Trustee Fafua and Trustee Brown, trying to kind of, obviously because technically you are our only employee.
Right.
But at the same time, I heard you say that you would appreciate from an advisory perspective, feedback from the board. So trying to figure out where that would be an appropriate level, but not infringe on.
I really more wanted to extend the invitation to participate in a way if you felt so inclined. I am completely fine not having you there.
Okay.
Well, I mean, when you
Quite
said,
frankly, but it's
when
just
you,
so as not to blur the lines, right?
Well, yeah.
But I have also been part of processes and see the purpose of having board members engage in the discussion around leadership. So
Well, that's where I
it's
see-
really just an option I'm putting out there and wanting to get your feedback on. It's not something that I see as a have to. And I really do appreciate the confidence that you shared, Trustee Papua. I'm very confident that our committee will be able to get input from parents and staff around the type of qualities that they want to have in a school site leader, and that the committee will utilize that input as part of their decision making.
However, if you needed any feedback or any advice from, we're here. The
Yes,
board
thank
is
you.
here. I'm present all the time.
well, that's where you had mentioned maybe even something when it gets down to the final two candidates.
Right.
Then doing something where we can have them come and give a presentation, or I don't know, you present both of their resumes to us and talk us through what the committee output has been. I don't know, something of that nature. I think
Yeah, that sounds good too.
kind of trying to split the difference of
Yeah.
not get in the
I
way.
appreciate
Balance.
But obviously, it's like, getting down to the final two. And obviously, yeah, I completely agree with what Trustee Fapua said. It's like it's your decision, but if you would like our feedback, I'm sure we'd be happy to provide that for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of input here. I really like to focus on the stakeholders' input with the staff. I think the board has a special place, and I believe we've done our job in bringing somebody else like yourself into a position where we know you can make these decisions, and these decisions are going to be your decisions. And I know you would love the input, but I'm pretty confident in how you're going to get through this. So I know time is of the essence. And I think that's what our big focus is on too. But moving forward, I think we do well.
Well, thank you very much. All right, next slide is the California Community Schools Partnership Program. In talking with Trustee Avalana, he had asked if I could help with the distinction between the type of grants surrounding opportunities with building community schools. So this slide goes through some of that. There are 3 types of grants associated with districts who are pursuing community schools identifications. The first one is a planning grant. So this is when there is no existing community school in a district, and a district or school, in our case, one and the same, applies for a planning grant. The grant is awarded, the grant award is up to $200,000 and can be served over 2 years. And there are 2 rounds of the planning grant, just reflecting this 2-year cycle. The next level, if you will, is the Community Schools Implementation Grant. So this is for new community schools already in existence, and they want to expand or continue their existence as a community school. So they can apply for an implementation grant, which happens after the planning grant, and the awards are up to $500,000. And there are multiple rounds. Oops, there's a typo. Sorry about that. Routes for this particular phase of the implementation grant. And then you have the extension grant. So these are existing community schools to help. This grant is to help to continue the work of the community school and to extend the funding for an additional 2 years. This cycle is not yet published. It starts in the beginning. Look at that, another typo, 2025-26 fiscal year. Sorry about that. And what we applied for is the planning grant. And there was a meeting at the state where applicants were, I guess, presented before the committee for approval. And I don't know the results of that, but we were one of the LEAs recommended to receive the community schools grant.
Great.
So as soon as I have confirmation on that, I'm happy to share the fabulous news.
I'm sorry, can we apply for 2 at the same time or
No.
just only 1?
Pick the
That's what the
biggest,
planning.
I know, but those 2
Right.
together, the first and the second
pick
one.
the biggest one.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was my question.
And then the
why
second
she
one.
presented this. So,
So the point of the planning grant and it being a 2-year cycle is that in your proposal, you present what your plan would be to utilize that funding for those 2 years to put a plan together so that you then, when you're applying to implement that plan, you get the additional funding to see that plan to fruition.
But it has to be in within those fiscal years.
The planning grant, yes, that the plan to implement it has to occur within those 2 years.
And then you have to use the whole grant so that and it doesn't. So what happened if you don't use it all?
If you're not successful in those 2 years, and when you apply for the actual implementation of the plan that you have created in those 2 years, then you don't get the money and you can't implement your plan. The idea is, though, that you are working really hard in those 2 years to
Yeah.
get stakeholder input, to make those community connections. To much of that $200,000 is spent in the first year on a community schools coordinator and a community schools coach to create the plan through meetings with stakeholders and parent education events that occur over the course of the 2 years, so that you're in a position to present a solid plan of what your community school looks like. And then you would intend to use up to whatever you're awarded, but up to $500,000 to implement that plan. So I am hopeful that over the next 2 years, we will be creating a plan for what our community school will look like.
great.
Okay? I will let you know. Keep you posted. So actually the next slide shows what the work would be. So in year 1, our proposed plan for the planning is to hire a community schools coordinator to facilitate the planning process, hire a community schools consultant to provide the coordinator with a preliminary plan and guidance on how to facilitate the planning process. The consultant would also provide support and coaching as needed so that we do have a high quality, inclusive process. And then stipends, a portion of the award would be used towards stipends to stipend the members of a community schools task force that would be created. And then in year 2, it would be a continuation of the work listed in year 1, but then to expand outside the staff and include parent info nights and parent education programs around our plan for the community school. So that in year 2 is where you get the focus on parent input in the process and the refining of the plan. And then the idea is at the end of year 2 is when we would apply for that implementation grant. Okay. Yay, exciting, exciting. And lastly, President Avalana is keeping me busy because he wanted me to share an attendance and enrollment report. And so I put together a quick overview. Our total enrollment is 335 students, 219 of whom live within our district boundaries. 116 are what we refer to as inter-district transfers. So these are students who live outside our district and have a different home district that have requested their home district to release them so that they can matriculate into our district. Many of those 116 are very close. They live across the street, across Geneva. We have a few who live farther out, and because the parents work close by, they make up some of those inter-district transfers. Another aspect of our attendance is this concept of independent study. So of these 335 students, the daily attendance, while it is on average 95% for the grades K-8, and that's that little box down at the bottom, our ADA is on average 95% of our population is here. We do have a portion of our population who requests what we call independent study. So this is when a child is out for 2 weeks or less, and they are asked while they are out of school to get work from the teacher that they can work on while they are out. That work then comes back, the teacher corrects it, and the child is given credit for attending school during that 2-week absence. Most of the requests when we have an independent study request are due to illness. So if you were out with COVID, you have to remain quarantined for a certain period of time, or flu where they might have a fever but can still function, or RSV. We have a few students who have had surgeries, so while they're recovering, they can still do some work. Or we do have students who go on family trips during the school year and asked to complete work. The timeline of 2 weeks or less is important. We do have students, if a student let me step back. We do have families who request independent study who are actually out of school more than 2 weeks. If a child is out of school more than 2 weeks, they have to be unenrolled, and then they can come, when they come back into town, they can re-enroll in the district. But we
Really?
won't.
There's a cap on independent study?
Wow. Is that number stays the same or it varies?
It varies depending. So
Okay.
for example, we had several students, we had an uptick in COVID in November and December. And so we had a larger population out on independent study because of COVID or illness related.
I wonder too if that number, the consistency of certain students that have independent study or parents' requests for that falls in that category of needing help, that are failing.
It ranges.
It ranges.
Yes.
Okay.
The other statistic there is that we have had 98 students, so almost a third of our population request some sort or request independent study for some reason or another. Of those 98, 34 of them have been students who are on IDTs. Just to let you know, IDTs, make up a third of our population. And both IDTs and residents request these independent studies.
Well, how are their grades? I know it would
It
depend.
would depend on the student. It varies.
How many students are fall into the chronic absentee category of 10% or more absences, unexcused absences?
I would have to get the data for you more specifically. Off the top of my head, I am aware of one student in particular who is a student who is homeless, who we are working to try and get some supports into place to help with the impact that the housing vulnerability has had on him and his family, so that his attendance can increase. But that's the one student who is on my mind right now. I don't have the data. I can't get that for you if you'd like.
So yeah, we're looking at a decline in enrollment overall. Is there any projections that we would have for next year?
So the projection that we use for that multi-year report that I was just talking about is a decline. It's an average of what the decline we've seen over the last 3 years. So it's a slight decline, but it's just a theory. It's not based on. It's based on what we've seen over the last few years.
Right. And it's pretty consistent throughout other districts.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's it for my report.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. Nope. I do have, I didn't put this in the slide. We do have a request from Dr. Smith. So as you will recall, we had a tentative date of April 24th set to finish our work on priorities, work with our priorities on the 24th. But as Brandy mentioned, we have a professional development day. I want to say it's actually April 23rd, where the whole staff will be engaged in professional learning. And we're going to April. Mm-hmm.
23rd.
That's a Sunday.
Okay, so then April 20. So I guess we were going to meet at the same time. We had a date with Dr. Smith, but we want to move that date. We want to push that out to May 4th, if that's the time that you're available, because it's important that we have an end result with the staff and their their goal work. And the next time the whole staff is going to be able to come together is on the 24th. So it's best for you to meet with Dr. Smith after that process is done. So he is available on May 4th from 4:30 to 7:30 to finish. Oh yeah. I didn't even think of that. So yes, are you available on May 4th?
I'm looking at the calendar. I'm open. I don't know if my fellow trustees are good. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm good for,
Miss Brown, are you available on the 4th?
yeah, the force is with me.
It's good.
Woohoo! All right.
What would
Then-
be the timing again?
What time?
4:30 to 7:30.
4:30 to 7:30.
We'll have dinner.
Lovely.
Surprised if I'll put it in there.
Huh?
She was looking at me.
I'll do it.
Waiting.
She was waiting for it. And then the last thing to point out, Ed Code says that you have to have a public hearing a public hearing for the LCAP, and then the board approves the LCAP after that public hearing. So you can either have two separate dates in June. You can have a public hearing board meeting date, and then a separate board meeting date to approve the LCAP, or depending on you, or you could approve the
another day
LCAP
of-
the same time
Just
after
a minute.
the same meeting after the public hearing, as long as there are not comments made from the public hearing that you want to somehow modify the LCAP. So I'm not sure how it's been done in the past. I think last
The
year
day
you had
off.
to, you did the
The
day off.
off, yeah.
Okay, so you currently, we currently have a board meeting set for June 8th.
Mhm.
So if you'd like to go with past practice and hold the public hearing that day and potentially approve the LCAP the same day, we can move forward with that. If for some reason the public hearing impacts the ability to approve the LCAP at that meeting, we will need to find another meeting in June because the LCAP needs to be approved by the board before July 1.
So that's a,
It would just be an emergency fallback. If there was any
Right.
issues that
Right.
came up afterwards,
What is,
then we'd have to
July
have an
1?
Which is-
emergency meeting.
Which
What
is we
July 1?
Yeah.
July 1 is
haven't
a
had
Saturday.
any.
The other thing I want to point out is that for my evaluation process, you will need to hold a special meeting at some point in June so that y'all can create a fabulous evaluation for me. So I don't know if that's something you also want to try and schedule now, or
You can.
By June?
so we'll need to have a final evaluation of the superintendent by June 30th. That's the end of my contract for this year.
Okay, so people, the week of the 11th, the 12th to the 17th, I am so not available because that's the San Mateo County Fair week. And I had to be present 7 days.
By the way,
Not
Kevin
7
Arrow
days,
says she's
only 1 day
available
for me.
for May 4th.
Wonderful, thank you. So if you want to hold a closed session on the June 8th date to review my evaluation, you can decide on you kind of have to backwards plan from that. So you would decide a date to meet to discuss the evaluation and create the final document that you would then present, and we would discuss in closed session on the 8th, if that's how you want to do that.
We can.
And that's how many
So
days we had to meet.
Well, so what the backward planning would entail is that you would ask me for my end of evaluation report, I guess. So similar, like in closed session after tonight's session, I'm providing a mid-year update. So I would provide a final accounting of my progress on the goals that we've established, and then you would each rank or weigh my progress and individually come to an understanding for yourselves, and then you would need to have a collective
Oh, this is good.
in closed session.
Okay.
Kind of come to a collective understanding of it. And this is something we can continue to talk about. But I'm just saying, if you want to have that closed session final evaluation discussion on the 8th, we just need to backwards plan in your schedule so that you have a date where you're getting together to have that discussion.
Okay, that sounds,
So that
That
sounds
sounds-
good.
yeah.
Is that going to work for everyone?
well, that sounds good for the 8th. And
Right.
then we need to plan a date after that before the 30th. Is it?
Well, no, you would want to have a date where you would finalize
Right.
the collective board evaluation of my performance before the 8th so that you can
Oh,
present.
before the 8th.
Yes, so that you can present your,
So we're looking at
Evaluation.
April or May?
well, I would say May because we're 3 weeks away from April and I'm just giving
Right.
you my mid progress report right now.
So you guys, we're meeting on the 4th of May.
So I would recommend sometime the week of May 28th, like from either May 28th to June 3rd, that you all get together, and then that just leaves President Abalana a few days to summarize, unless, I don't know.
Yeah.
We haven't finalized the whole process, which we'll discuss in closed session. So perhaps we table this conversation.
I think we table that until we discuss that
Okay,
further in closed session.
okay. Then now I'm done.
All right. Thank you. Number 11, board member reports. I'll start with Papua. Do you have any board member reports?
Yes, I'm gonna try to run it so fast. First thing, I wanted to give out a shout out to everybody that was spearheading the reading thing last Friday. The event went well. I was able to bring my son to read to the 2 third grades, which were giving out a shout out to those 2 teachers. The classroom climate was perfect. The setup, the classroom management was, wonderful. One classroom, there were two students that were kind of acting, disrespectful. So I had to put my hat on the SAE. And discipline them right there, right then. It takes a village to raise a child, but it came out really good. The kitchen ladies did a wonderful job. When I entered the school, the smell of the food greeted me there. Beautiful, well done. Thank you for the lunch. I was just talking to Ms. Rocio before the meeting. Some tiny suggestions for future is to first, maybe instead of having it down there, in the staff room, because I felt like it was too much, staff are coming in to get their processions, and whatnot. I think that staff room is supposed to be for the staff, and to give them that space and respect their space in the morning to get their coffee and stuff like that. I think we need to set it up in the Maker's Lab, to come there. And but I spoke with Rocio. She said it's going to go, because of the COVID, it's going to go back to having an assembly and introducing the readers to the students and whatnot. So that, and then having name tags for all the readers, who the readers were to the students. I also want to give out a shout out to the preschool staff. They did San Mateo did survey, no, not survey. They did this. It's called Quality Count San Mateo under Eckers and Classroom Survey scoring system, and they score really high. I read their scoring, and they score really high. So be appreciated. We should celebrate, the staff there for doing a wonderful job. I don't know if you guys attended the that class about trauma that was sent out by CP. Yeah, it was really good. How is trauma-informed education defined? And it was really good. So the recommendations for Covenant's team is, first, center the voices of those impacted. Second, ask who is impacted, who is empowered, who else needs to be here. Be transparent and productive and proactive. Build connections with educators actively and spend time in schools. That's the one thing I took out of there. For me as a board member, to be active and be on school. So they have a panel. And the things I was hearing from one of them was, there was 4 panels and one was a board member. And one of them was a staff, like, we want to see more board members on campus. So to really know what's going on. So that's my report for us. And I'm glad the libraries are able to be here, and that other free service for our children. They did a really good job. Okay,
Thank you, Ms. Valpua.
thank you.
Skip me, I'm still chewing.
Mr. Rudolph?
Well, I would just reiterate a lot of what Trustee Fapua mentioned regarding the Read Across America. It was great to see all the guest readers come in. And it was a lot of fun reading to the kids. So I would say if there's a way to make it happen more frequently, that'd be great, especially now that, you know, as you had mentioned, COVID restrictions are kind of being phased out.
Right.
It would be great to get, you know, parents involved and
Yes, that's what
other guests. So, and yes, as you had mentioned, the lunch was prepared by our cafeteria staff was amazing. So
I took leftovers. I did some home.
Well, I'm ready.
All right.
I'm so
Trustee
sorry
Brown.
I missed that. Was it Read Across America? I probably couldn't read anyway. I don't know what's going on with me, so I have had different tests almost every week since last month. And I had a pulmonary function test that scared the mess out of me because you're placed in this, it's like a telephone booth, but it's completely glass and they have to shut you in. I don't know if it's air pressure or what. And then you breathe into some apparatus to see your lung capacity. So anyway, but I'm sorry I missed that Read Across America. But yeah, I'm going to be okay. I'm fine. I'm doing physical therapy on the shoulder and it's going well. And while I'm at home and doing certain research, I did research some more LCAP information, and this came across my computer about the California State PTA and how they have a checklist for parents and student leaders, and I thought it was interesting in that since our LCAP approval or the work is being done, maybe I can share this with the board to see how we can have our parents just look into it. There's a couple of links on here. And they can be shared, but I'll just pass it and see what you think about it.
Thank you.
is it okay for
Yeah.
them to hold on to that?
Yes, he can hold on. Mr. President.
All right. Thank you so much, Superintendent Veal. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Just that I had a lovely meeting this afternoon. It was our first site council meeting at Bayshore, and there were 4 parents and 4 amazing staff and 2 amazing 7th graders, one of whom you're responsible for, President Abalana.
That's a shame.
And it was a great start to an important committee that I look forward to doing lots of great work and having very important discussions with. So shout out to Principal Baker, who has worked really hard to get this committee together. We had a wonderful first meeting, and I look forward to more discussion.
Good job.
Great.
Yes.
Good job. Yeah, I just want to echo what all the fellow board members have mentioned. I'm excited to hear about what you just presented as far as this site council meeting and how that's going to come along. And I'm just excited for many things that are happening within Bayshore School District. There's been a lot going on this school year, and you know, with everyone who is all hands-on here, it's going to translate into the success of our students. And we got a lot of work ahead of ourselves, and we just got to keep applying what we're doing because I think great things are coming out of it. You know, we're looking at all of us as leaders contributing in many different ways and fashions, and it's really translating to our staff. It's now translating to our students, and that's what we want is the best outcome for everyone, and especially our students. So With that being said, I just want to thank everyone tonight. We're going to adjourn this open regular meeting at 9:10. We will go take a 5-minute break and go directly into closed session at approximately 9:15.
Thank you, Mr. Patel, for being here.
Oh,
Thank
yeah.
you, Annette.
Good to see
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Dyke.